Welcome to Conversations Different, the podcast of the Santa Fe New Mexican, featuring the interesting people, places, and issues of New Mexico and New Mexicans. This week, we are still discussing the legislature, meeting with GOP representatives to talk about their ideas for improving the lives of New Mexicans. With us today are Representative Rebecca Dow from District 38 and Senator Nick Paul, District 33. Welcome.
Hey, thanks for having us.
Good morning. Appreciate the invite.
Yeah, it's good to have you. So you had to come all the way from R-Alamogordo, Senator Paul. What's it like being in Santa Fe? This is going to be your first session as a senator.
First session, ask me again in 60 days, and I'll give you a more, accurate response. But looking forward to it. It's Santa Fe's a beautiful area, lots of great food. One of the nice things about coming up here, obviously, with the 60-day session, be doing a lot more work and a lot less enjoying food, but yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's a change from being down in the southern part of the state, but we're up here to do the things that need to be done to represent the folks of District 33 and throughout the state of New Mexico. So I'm excited.
And Representative Dow, I know you were in this legislature, now you're back. How do you feel and what do you hope to accomplish?
Well, I'm excited to be back. I hope that I get some time to go. I love being up in Santa Fe because I like going shopping at the antique stores and the consignment shops.
I was going to say, and we have
the food.
Them.
Yeah, yep. I hope not to gain the freshman 15. It's real, Senator. Be careful because there's lots of dinners and lots of desserts. So I want to do a little bit better eating at the great places here. But we're both from the southern part of the state, and that's that population is often forgotten. It a lot of times it's not even Republican versus Democrat. It's rural versus metropolitan ideas. And so, we have a job to do, which is to represent the folks from our district. We live a different life and have a different pace. And unfortunately, we're in the majority. But, I hope that our new leadership in both chambers, that we can work together across the aisle and make sure that rules, which are to represent the minority, are implemented, and that the voice of the minority is heard, which happens to be the Republican Party in this state.
That's, I think, one of the things you talked about just then, talking about rural versus urban, that really, as you said, crosses party, because if you go to the north, you've got people from the Espanola Valley, from Mora Valley, all of those places that probably have as much in common with people who live on ranches or in farms in the south. So there must be some areas of crossover where you can work with people who might be Democrats to pass things that are of interest and needed in the rural areas.
Yeah, one of the first calls that I got after the election was from a representative here in Santa Fe, Andrea Romero, and she says, hey, we're really going to have a focus on housing. And that was super exciting to me because if you talk to people from the rural area, we've been really hit by natural disasters and catastrophic fires and lost a lot of homes. I mean, I'm sitting here with Senator who represents part of Lincoln County, and how we manage our land and prevent catastrophic fires, but also housing recovery, workforce. It's really hard to gain and retain qualified staff, whether it's education or healthcare providers in rural New Mexico. And we know, we have a lot of aging homes that need to be replaced. So I'm absolutely agree that housing is an issue. Now, how are we going to get there? I haven't seen a lot of bills pre-filed that I would be willing to vote for because we just think differently, right? So we're seeing the same need, and we have different philosophical approaches to the policies we should implement to solve the problems.
Right. Well, one of the things I've heard say when you're in the minority is there's a couple of things you can do. One is you try to block things that you think are completely hideous. So you work to maybe bring a few conservative Democrats over. But the other is to issue amendments so that maybe you can make something that has a good goal, but you don't like the way they're getting there. So as a freshman senator, how do you plan to approach maybe adding parts to bills so you can make them better for your constituents?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think back to what Representative Dow said, you've got to be willing to reach across the aisle and developing those relationships and being able to help our fellow colleagues across the aisle understand, hey, why are we bringing this amendment? This affects the folks in this given area, for both of us in rural New Mexico. Maybe they just don't see it the way that we do, or that the people living in those parts of the state do. And so I think it's key that you've got to be willing to have those open dialogues and conversations, because that's how we get to what is favorable for we would hope the majority of New Mexicans, if not all.
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about this is everyone says it's a divided country. We disagree, blah, blah, blah. And I think, that's somewhat true. But one of the things in the legislature in New Mexico that has managed to survive is the idea that you can compromise and that you can work together. And why do you think, Representative Dow, that's still a thing here, that we're not necessarily just having competing press conferences and sound bites every day?
Right. Well, I think part of it is, what we were talking about before we started the recording is that we are a citizen-led legislature. And so we are very approachable and available to the people. And so when we introduced an idea like eliminating the tax on Social Security income, that was not necessarily a bipartisan bill. But the people, you see your representative in the grocery store, you see them at the soccer field. And it is something that people wanted. And it was introduced over and over and over again. I think it was at least 8 years being introduced. And then, we had this surplus. And so people kind of grew onto it. Or Larry Ladanaga's bill for the Early Childhood Trust Fund that was co-sponsored with Senator Smith. Like, those are some great things, or the great compromise around workman's comp. Some of these issues, sometimes I wish we would find collaboration and some deliberation sooner, because sometimes it's critical mass when it occurs. Like the workman's comp issue and maybe medical malpractice, hopefully find some compromise. And I hope that continues. But I'd say prior to this legislation, there was a lot more moderate Democrats who felt compelled to represent the districts they serve. And now they've been primaried. I'm a little concerned. And I hope that what you're suggesting remains true.
Because it's not really a collaborative body if one side has so much pressure that they can just steamroll you and pass everything with no votes from the other party. I mean, is that something
he has not seen this yet?
Yes.
But my freshman year, there was about 6 more Republicans in the House, as well as at least a dozen moderates. Carl Trujillo,
Right.
We
still have Joseph Sanchez.
We still have Joseph Sanchez, but he has a lot of pressure on him.
Yes.
And the citizens are bringing him back. I think they've made it clear that organically he reflects their district, but that doesn't seem to be allowed. So as it gets more partisan, a lot of members are, chairman, they'll suspend public comment. They'll limit debate. I've presented bills before. I hope it's not going to be this way, where the members in the majority leave the room, come back, and move to table. And that's not the intent of the rules, and it's not the intent. Law should be a little bit harder to pass than that.
Okay. So, what are you looking forward to this?
You don't know what you don't know.
Yes.
But I've had, I'm surrounded with a lot of great mentors, a lot of people that have been here for a number of years who have the experience that I can lean on. And so I think that that's crucial for freshmen like myself that are coming in first time around. It's a lot to take in and digest. There's a ton of information that you get on a more micro level than what you do just kind of sitting back as an everyday New Mexican. Most people aren't getting off into the weeds on a lot of the bills and legislation that are coming up and being discussed and debated up here. But I look forward to that because I think it is going to make for an opportunity to do some great things for the state and for the people, that I represent in District 33.
All right. We'll be back in a moment with more Conversations Different.
HomeWise is a local New Mexico nonprofit committed to increasing the availability of affordable homes for working people in Santa Fe. Our HomeWise Homes communities provide quality-built, energy-efficient homes with up to 40% of the houses reserved for modest-income buyers. Our newest community, Miraflores, offers single-family homes with spacious backyards, a family-friendly environment, and convenient access to the Tierra Contenta Trail Network. Standard features include low-E vinyl windows, stainless steel appliances, granite kitchen countertops, a tankless water heater, and more. Contact us today to learn more about Miraflores. Call 505-983-9473 or visit us at homewise.org. Equal Housing Lender, NMLS number 188231.
We are back with Conversations Different, talking to Rebecca Dow, a state representative, and Nick Paul, a state senator. One of the things that the governor has said is that she wants the legislature to focus on public safety. Democratic leadership has said they're going to come up the first 30 days, do behavioral health, public safety. I know the Republican joke is, what took you so long? But talk about whether Representative Dow, from your experience in the past, do you think that a substantive package can be done quickly without all the maybe time wasting that sometimes happens in the beginnings of a session?
Yeah. Well, I don't necessarily take it lightly or think it's a joke when we say what took you so long.
Mm-hmm.
We've got 2 New Mexicans dying a day of fentanyl. Child homicide has doubled under MLG. We hear excuse after excuse that it's Susana Martinez who made a crisis in behavioral health, but that was 12 years ago and billions of dollars ago. So time is urgent. I'm a little concerned about this big package, especially when the governor announces yesterday that she won't pass it if it doesn't have gun control. We started this off talking about listening to the minority vote. Taking away the law-abiding citizens' right to bear arms is a no deal for us. So here we get presented a package that we can't support, and it's a this or nothing statement from the fourth floor. And thus, New Mexicans stay in communities where they are unsafe.
Well, you could argue maybe there's some gun control that will focus more on bad people and not on law-abiding citizens.
Yes.
It could be the enhanced penalties for crimes or something like that.
Yeah, bills that I've carried in the past.
Yeah. So sometimes you have to look beyond the kind of soundbite terms and say, would I support this? Like, not having... When they tried to lower the age for people, not necessarily here, but for young people to buy big rifles. That seems sort of sensible, or, requiring gun safety storage. That seems sensible and doesn't take away people's rights, I don't think, but that's just me. Senator, what do you think? Have you been reading these bills? What are your positions in terms of what kind of public safety legislation would you like to see?
Yeah, been keeping up with it as much as one can coming in, just processing all the new information, from being from Alamogordo just over the last... 2016 was the first time that we had, not the first time, but one of the more recent where we had an officer killed by somebody
that was horrible.
That should not have been on the streets. Then we go back to 2023 and we had another officer killed by somebody who should not have been on the streets. And so I think until we get serious about keeping violent criminals in jail until their trial, we've got issues, that's coming from small town where we've seen it firsthand. As far as any legislation that starts to look and identify, possible issues with guns, like you really got to, in my perspective, you got to dig in and look and see what those bills are all about, because from a conservative standpoint, if we start giving an inch here and an inch there, then the next thing it's not just for criminals that we're limiting access to guns. It's for everyday citizens. And that's something that, myself and the Republicans just don't want to see.
Yeah, no, I understand that. Yeah, I always joke that it's the good citizens that can't handle their guns that I'm worried about, because If you go downtown, you don't know who's got a concealed carry, and you don't know if that person has actually done the work.
Oh, I was absolutely horrified when the governor implemented her executive order. And I go from Sierra through Socorro, through Valencia, through Bernalillo County to get to Santa Fe. And for me not to have that firearm on my body if I'm going to be in Bernalillo and leave it in a vehicle in a glove box where number one highest rate of car thefts did not seem logical to me at all. So then I'm a responsible firearm owner, and then I would have to leave it in a car where it's at risk of being stolen and getting into the wrong hand.
Yeah, no, because if they take the whole car, then the safe doesn't help.
Yeah, but if, as a law-abiding citizen, I think New Mexico's Second Amendment rights are pretty clear. The right to bear arms are pretty clear for the New Mexico Constitution as well as the U.S. Constitution, which is what we'll raise our hand and swear to uphold today when we take our oath of office.
I want everyone to protect the right of freedom of assembly, and that means I can go places and not worry about someone shooting me. That's my goal, because it seems like we have competing rights, and the First Amendment is first, and Second Amendment is second. And I'm very happy that you guys don't have to have hearings anymore with people carrying rifles. I mean, did that ever bother you?
Not at all.
Not at all. Yeah, I didn't like it. I would always sit in the back.
It bothered me that I wasn't allowed to go to church at Easter and Christmas. It bothered me that I wasn't allowed to assemble or speak freely about how I felt about it. That bothered me a lot.
Well, you could assemble. You just couldn't stand close to people.
No, church was shut down for a very long time. Yeah, we could have church at home. We were suggested to use it Facebook or online, and that's a step too far. Everybody should be concerned about any sort of suppression of free speech or gathering or assembling.
I was happy that I wasn't getting sick at church, and
That's a choice. Those
You
are
know, it
choices.
is a choice.
Those are choices, and I think people who know they're vulnerable take the precautions that they need to. And with a lot of freedom comes a lot of responsibility.
It is.
That's why it's we the people.
The mega churches at Albuquerque that kept meeting, they had people in their bands die, but I guess it was worth it to them to worship. So moving on to the next thing, one of the things the governor said to me that was kind of interesting about the powers of the governor is that one of the reasons she really wanted to bear down on making people feel safer is that people said you could close down cities. Why can't you fix this? Which I think it might be easier to issue an executive order closing something than it is to go put everybody in jail, because
I don't think she ever should have closed down cities.
Yeah, we're going to move on from that.
But I mean, that's one, two wrongs don't make a right.
No, but
the premise is kind of flawed.
But what she was saying is that a lot of people think the executive is more powerful probably than they are.
Yes.
But looking at what you look for in terms of behavioral health, do you think that we can reestablish a system where people can get the treatment they need quickly and fast enough? Because you've got two problems. You've got the violent criminals, but you've also got the low-level people who make everyone feel unsafe on the streets.
Yeah, I'm hopeful, and I think Representative Dow probably can speak in more depth about this, but, I think it's something that's needed to be addressed for a number of years now. I mean, we live in little old Alamogordo, and my office looks out on one of the main streets through town, and over the years, it's been interesting just to see the number of people that have some type of mental health issue that are just wandering, up and down the streets, and, where do they go? What are they doing? I mean, it's you've being a Christian, I've got compassion for folks, and we want to get those folks help. And Rebecca, if you've got anything, further as far as what you can share.
I think this is an area where we've had a lot of bipartisan support. I mean, if you look at the bills that are around prevention and early intervention, whether it's home visiting, pre-K, universal school lunches, the things that build a healthy child, it's easier to build a healthy child than to mend a broken man. I think there's been a lot of agreement on that. I think there's many investments that have been made. Home visiting is a perfect example, yet when it was pitched and probably had nearly unanimous support, it was around targeting the families who need it the most. But yet there we run into this hiccup where it's overfunded, underutilized, and never mandated for the families that need it most. So we're preparing the next generation because they're in this generation of this disparity in their homes. So I hope that there's agreement this year that we can revise some of these things that are voluntary and make it mandatory, whether if a parent has substantiated abuse and neglect, if a juvenile is convicted of a crime, that these treatments and interventions not remain voluntary, because we're funding them to the tune of millions and millions and millions.
So basically help people even if they don't want the help. Or
these are
guide them.
These are people who have had substantiated abuse and neglect.
Right.
So the reunification, why does it remain voluntary? Yeah. A juvenile who's doing violent crimes is engaging in adult behavior. There is help. We can reduce recidivism, but this philosophical perspective that you're not responsible for behavior if you're a minor, if you're low income, if you're a person of color, or if you grew up in poverty. I grew up in poverty. I was responsible for my behavior. We're all responsible for our behavior. And I think a big difference between conservative and more progressive views is that we take responsibility and learn from we have choices, but they come with consequences, versus the government is always going to be able to fix things. We just don't believe that.
Yeah,
we want things local.
I don't think that's exactly what progressives believe either. But on that note, we'll take a quick break and be back in a moment with more Conversations Different.
This is Patrick Dorsey, publisher of the Santa Fe New Mexican. Looking to reach a wider audience and grow your business? For 175 years, the Santa Fe New Mexican has been the trusted voice of Santa Fe, with unmatched local reach in print and online. In addition to our long-standing, independent, family-owned newspaper, we have a full-fledged marketing team with the expertise to help you succeed in the 21st century. From traditional print to precision-targeted digital advertising, we have the tools to connect you with your ideal customers. Partner with us and see the results for yourself. Advertise with the Santa Fe New Mexican and unlock your business's full potential. Visit us at santafenewmexican.com/advertising or call us at 505-995-3852. Thank you.
We are back with Conversations Different with Rebecca Dow and Nick Paul. over the break, we were talking about the need to have more fentanyl abuse treatment, substance abuse treatment centers. And you just told a story of what can happen with the right supports and the right treatment. So share that with everybody.
This is so great. So I don't know if everyone knows about it, but one of the things that the Department of Corrections is doing is a RISE program. And communities can come up with their idea of what they want to do post-incarceration. This had bipartisan support. And in Sierra County, what they decided was to have temporary housing for up to 6 months if they're in compliance with their parole, if they are staying in treatment and going to their, all their compliance things, and if their children are enrolled in the programs that are available to them, home visiting, early childhood, parent-child psychotherapy, all those sorts of things.
Support the whole family.
Supporting the whole family and getting them back to work. And so I was telling them during the break that this young man, he's in his late 30s, has spent over 16 years in prison. And he was one of the very first clients in the program. And that was 5 years ago now, 5 years ago, and the recidivism rate is dropped in Sierra County. He has not reoffended. He got married. He has a young daughter, and he's doing the remodel on my house. So he's working under a contractor and working on his contractor's license. He's having a little hiccups with that, but it was really fun. I got to register him to vote, and pretty cool to see him succeeding.
That is, because you can't. It's such a waste of human potential.
Yeah.
And if they're going to keep doing bad things, they really obviously should go to jail and not come out. But if they're going to be out, we want them to be well. And
these are, we agree. I mean, these things were nonviolent crimes for a lot of them. And a lot of people with their conditions of their parole, they may miss an appointment because their car's broken down. We're in agreement on that. What we want is violent criminals off the street. But the senator said something, you don't know what you don't know. And this young man, David, I'm sure he's not listening to this, but I'm super proud of him. He'll say that. I just didn't know what I didn't know. And this parenting class or this, anger management class, this has changed my life. So pretty proud of him. Yeah,
that's pretty awesome. And that's a lot of work because you have to do the work. And I know what you were talking about, seeing people on the streets of your town. I grew up in Las Vegas, so I was used to seeing people on the streets of my town because the state hospital residents used to come get day passes. And I remember having visitors coming and saying, why do you have so many interesting people sitting on your benches? And I was like, well, we're the state hospital. And, I grew up that way, but it wasn't to the degree that it is now with people sleeping on the streets like they are. And I do think that we had a letter writer who said, if people in charge don't get that we're all fed up, I'm going to find a tough on crime Republican and vote for him for governor, and that's it. I'm done with you people. So what do you see as the legislator's role? What kind of laws or what kind of support can they give to communities to help, with homelessness and with people getting them off the streets?
That's a good question. Legislators need to listen to, what the local communities are saying. And I think, Rebecca's, Representative Dow's story that she shared speaks volumes about what can happen when you give some control to the local areas. That it's like we had talked, earlier in the show, that metro is different than rural, and every community is a little bit different. And so being able to maybe have programs that are put in place, but there's some ability, latitude to have some flexibility for local communities to implement what's going to work best for their given community. I think that's a great place to be able to start.
Right. So let some power stay at the local level.
The local
right.
And it's not everybody's doing housing in the RISE program.
Yeah.
Okay.
So people are proposing different things.
Exactly.
Yes.
Housing might work.
I've seen a community that's doing vocational. They're completely focused on workforce reentry.
Yep. And I was going to say that, so in Alamogordo, for example, maybe it's the educational side of things, the getting back into the workforce, that maybe housing's not as much of the concern, but they still need to be able to have some opportunity and get those tools that they need to do what this gentleman has done that Representative Dow had mentioned. Those are the stories that we want to hear and see in the news. It gets tough. We turn on the nightly news and it's just all negative. It's crime, murders, deaths, and I want to see the good things that happen.
And there's plenty of good things. And I think
Yeah,
I think one of the reasons people feel badly today is that we know all the bad stuff in real time.
Yep. Yeah, that's always tough, with social media and the news, you're getting fed that stuff and that sells, right? So.
Yeah, maybe good news is going to be our next. That's one thing about local papers is we always have a few good
Yes.
stories.
We
Yes.
just got our local paper back, and I'm super excited about that because
Nice.
it's turned into something beyond just publishing, reprint of the USA Today. And so now we get local articles, about what kids are doing in school, sports programs, other things that are happening in the community. And I think that's huge, for just locals to be able to hear those things that are going on. So
No, it helps, and they showed that in news deserts, which are places without newspapers, that's where people have the least grasp of actual facts.
Yeah.
They've done all this research.
I can tell you that about my district. My personal experience knocking the doors 2, 3, 4 times. It's a lot of the unincorporated areas, and other than the city limits of Socorro, it's very each community is chopped up with at least 2 other seats. And so they do not have local radio. They do not have local news. They don't have local chambers. It's a little bit of this town, a little bit of that town. And they're pretty disconnected, and they're living their daily lives. So it was really valuable to go and knock all those doors and hear from them directly.
Yeah. What do people of your district want from you this session?
Well, a lot of it was about safety. A lot of it was about safety, and I hope we can tackle this. In the unincorporated areas in northern Doniana, they don't even have streetlights. Their roads look like arroyos. They have gated. Their homes are completely gated all the way around, like you're at an embassy or something, and no trespassing signs. And what they told me was that if they don't have a no trespassing sign, and if they don't have their homes gated, that they were considered an attractive nuisance, and the response time is so slow. So we're talking just basic public safety, streetlights, a road that's navigable, and a timely response from law enforcement. But being close to the border, as we both are, we are hearing our law enforcement officers, we follow their lead, just like what you said. They're saying we need technology, we need vehicles, we need roads graded, we need to be able to hire and retain qualified staff, and we need to be able to enforce the laws. We need people to back us up and enforce the laws that are on the books. And it was a lot about that, and a lot about cost of living.
Did they talk about why their county governments aren't doing better with road grading? Because a lot of that's a local thing. So what's happening
Yeah,
at
it was
that?
really strange. So
Yeah.
in the northern part of Las Cruces, the street signs are red, and the street signs that are red mean that they were developed by a private developer. I'm in Las Cruces city limits, but the people are responsible for maintenance of their own roads.
Oh, okay.
It is very strange, but I think there's some work around that. I had bipartisan bill with Representative Willie Madrid that was for rural bus routes, and we're doing so much on transportation, and you see these piles of milling, and we're both like, man, the roads are so bad, and now they want kids to do their homework and get tutoring on the bus while you can't even read
No,
paper.
you're
jarring up and down,
Yes.
and the wear and tear on the vehicles that we have to replace, and so anyways, and there's not enough capital outlay for that, so we did a bill to say hey, let's use these millings on these rural bus routes. The bill did not pass, and you don't have to pass a bill, Senator, to get stuff done, because DOT made those available to any municipality can use those. And so I'm hoping that we can get the word out for soil and water districts, which are a governmental entity,
Right.
and to water districts, which are a governmental entity, because those millings are available to them. And a lot of the doors that I knocked in the neighborhoods that I was in, if you want to call them neighborhoods, these rural areas, they're part of a water district or a soil and water district, so they could get access to those millings, and they don't have to have compaction work and a lot of work to get it done.
But it smooths out the road.
Smooths out the road.
Yep.
and make it safer. I really did not know they were roads, except that there are mailboxes and mail trucks.
Oh, that's not okay. I know when my folks were living in rural Mora County, depending on who was in the county commission, one commission would say, no, that's a private road, and they would not do anything. Mm-hmm. And then you'd have to go borrow a thing and do it yourself. And other times it would be, because it was a public road. It had been a public road for years. But if you voted for the wrong person, it wasn't. And then they would have their road. And it was just the most important thing in that election was whether their road was going to work.
Yeah. I really hope we can get some capital outlay, some parity in the rural areas. Most of our metropolitan representatives have a 6 square mile area.
Yeah.
And those of us in rural, 3 counties. Chatfield has 6 counties, and to take that same 2.6 million, probably likely this year for capital, and divide that by communities that have no infrastructure, no streetlights, no road maintenance, and try to figure out how to appropriate those funds. I'm well over $160 million in requests right now for 2.7 million. But someone in a metropolitan area can build a museum in 1 year because they can all pull together, and we're saying, you know what, we need some people that are they're not safe. We need some basic infrastructure, some water infrastructure. You said, Vegas.
Drive down Cerrillos really fast, or Paseo de Peralta, and you might say they need to spend their money on roads here too.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to disagree with that.
Yeah, I was out running this morning and found a couple potholes. So,
man.
They exist. But
Yes.
I think what Representative Dow said, it's tough when you're representing such vast
Yes.
areas, right? And so we have to get strategic and hope that there's other representatives, senators that we can team up with to help stretch those capital outlay dollars a little further. But when you look at the 6-inch binder that I've got personally put together for requests, it's just staggering. And a lot of them do, especially in the rural communities, center around water, and in these water districts that needs something to just keep it going so that people can still get service. So it's tough. But for my areas, Lincoln County obviously had a heck of a summer last year. And I know that Representative Harlan Vincent's going to be doing a lot of hard work and has started laying the path to try and bring back some additional monies to that community. Roswell and Chavez counties had, the same thing with the flooding that they experienced. So I think that are priorities for those communities. How do we stand to back up? How do we get people insured in Lincoln County? A lot of these folks that have homes there still can't get insurance.
No, ours went up 30% last year,
and
we're not even in a fireplace.
Yeah, and it's not limited just to Rio Doso, right? This is happening statewide.
Yeah.
People that live in Cloudcroft, that's not in my district, but still up in the Sacramento Mountains. I mean, they're experiencing the same thing. They can't get coverage, or if they can, it's an astronomical number, and so it's tough to see people go through that. And so I know that Representative Vincent's working, would like to, co-sponsor any of that stuff with him. I think he's got somebody else, but I won't spoil I don't think he's pre-filed yet, but I'll let him share all that when he decides to file. And then for Otero County and Alamogordo, Tularosa, is infrastructure needs a lot of help there. Alamogordo has a housing shortage with the military base in town. You got a lot of these airmen that when they get a new group in, they've got to move off base and they come into the community, and now local residents don't have housing supply. So I'm trying to solve and find ways to help mitigate those issues for those communities.
It sounds like there's a lot of common issues in every town and city in the state if the legislature can kind of work together. So you've got the big things that everyone knows about, but then underneath the surface, how do you figure out an equitable way to take care of roads in Santa Fe versus Sierra County? So it's a lot.
And when you're in the House, you're running every 2 years. Part of the responsibility is to bring home, capital outlay and, funding to your district. So it's hard to get folks to give that up. But I hope that with this surplus that we've had year over year, we've created over 100 funds. One of those funds should be a rural capital outlay fund because, we are the name of the podcast. The diversity of the state comes from the beautiful rural areas that we all love to go and travel and visit and visit the restaurants and visit the culture and see the people and celebrate it. And it really is at risk, if that voice is not heard. And so we need to think beyond, every 2 years, and we got to find a solution to that.
Is someone going to do a rural fund?
Yes. Yeah. And then, as far as the catastrophic fire, I mean, it is impacting everyone.
Right.
And, the next catastrophic fire is right around the corner. So you have to ask yourself, what are the reasons? People have these big micro theories on what it is. But right here in New Mexico, we have a bottleneck in archaeological surveys. It's very, very hard to do vegetation management in the state of New Mexico on federal land. And the permits and the processes are very complicated. And one of the bottlenecks is archaeological surveys. But there is a paraprofessional program, very, very high demand, very good paying, 40-hour course with some supervision from an archaeologist. So I know Harlan Vincent and Luis Terrazas and myself, we're going to be introducing a bill to address some of that because we're trying to build career technology pathways. It does not require a degree. It's urgent. It's immediate. We need it now, not only for stabilization and recovery where the fires have already been, but to prevent the next fire from happening. So we can there's a lot of dollars out there to do fire prevention. Mm-hmm. The archaeological surveys are definitely one of the bottlenecks.
Wow, that's really interesting. And I know one of the dangers is that with each new disaster, you forget 4 disasters ago. And, you have people up north that are still waiting to get their disaster fund.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure people in Ruidoso are in the same boat.
I feel so bad for what the
Yeah.
senator is going to be facing. It's been 3 years since Calf Canyon Hermit's
Yep.
peak fire.
Yep.
And I did a tour. I was just so interested. And I went and did a tour with the Society of Range Management on what they were doing, what I was calling recovery, like stop calling it recovery. We're in stabilization. We haven't moved to recovery.
Yeah.
There are 72 acequias that were destroyed that don't even have the engineering designs done. There are not enough engineers to even do the designs. We're a decade away from fixing and repairing those acequias. I think we're all in agreement. We see the appropriation request for that. I hope we find common ground on those. Sometimes it's hard for fiscal conservatives to vote yes for new reoccurring social programs when we are not meeting what we're already statutorily obligated to. For instance, we are not paying for home health care at the right rate and these types of things. And knowing that fires, we can invest millions in prevention instead of billions in recovery. And can you ever really recover what was lost in the beautiful area you grew up in?
No.
Yeah. So we were really focused on necessities, even with a surplus.
Yeah. And one of the bills, I don't know how much traction it's going to get, is to get rid of the income tax.
Yeah.
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 So
I remember my freshman year. I don't know. Do you want to talk on this one?
No, you go for
my
it.
freshman year, it was Bill McCamley, a Democrat, and John Arthur Smith,
Conservative
Democrat. And then I don't even remember who the Republicans were, but there was Harper, of course, Jason Harper, and I don't remember who the Senate one was. But this bill was so good because it did a reform of the GRT and the tax code. And I mean, I've been criticized for it, but it replaced all this mess with it was less than 3% flat tax, but it was applied on food as well. But so it was bipartisan support going really well, but advocacy groups really went against it and it didn't happen. And so, but the main reason was we have no surplus. We can't try this.
because there's no surplus. Right.
We need tax reform. We all agree we need tax reform. We've got this Swiss cheese. Whoever had the best lobbyist got a carve out here and tax credit there. We need it, but there's no surplus.
Well, now there's
What's
the
the
surplus
excuse now.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And you just have to look at Arizona and say, what kind of policies should we be adopting? Because we came into statehood at the same time and they've done things a little different. This isn't an experiment. There's 50 states to look at.
Yep.
There's states we can look at for best practices.
Yeah, and doing that would take some gumption, and there was a drive to do that, and now it's kind of faded again. GRT tax reform is one of those little dreams of editorial writers everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah, we want to see that.
We all
it
want to
is.
see it.
Yeah.
It's
Yes, we do.
it's crazy the impact that has.
Yeah.
But yeah, there and we need to take the opportunity to do these reforms when we have a surplus. But I mean, if we're going to be factual, the paid family medical leave is the largest tax in New Mexico's history, over $1 billion price tag, and we have a surplus. So
that's back again.
It's back again,
Yep.
and that's what the progressives, if we're talking about progressives versus conservatives, we'd like to see tax reforms that would allow innovation and economic opportunities, rolling back red tape that isn't necessary, really creating opportunities for us to thrive, whether it's technology, whether it's new forms of energy. We've got the labs, we've got the military bases, we've got all types of natural resources, and New Mexico's full of innovators, artists, creative people who can solve problems. And we think that the reforming GRT and eliminating income tax would be a way to really let some economic ingenuity happen.
All right.
New space.
It would definitely change the rules of the game. All right. And want to say anything else before we go? We're almost done.
No, I just appreciate the opportunity to be here. I look forward, as a freshman coming in, it's a lot to learn, a lot to see, and get to know how the inner workings happen. So I'm extremely excited about that, and look forward to linking back up again here in the near future. So appreciate the invite today.
Well, thank you so much, and thank you, Representative Dow, Senator Paul. We appreciate it. This has been another Conversations Different. We'll be back next week.